the the third in a series of special CPD events of a distinctly contemplative flavor that Celia has coordinated for us this year. And this is a really, really exciting one. I'm really, really glad this is the final one for the year. Dr. David Frawley, known as Vamadeva Shastri, is possibly the greatest living scholar of yoga and Vedic traditions on the planet right now. We're going to dive into some spiritual and philosophical aspects of yoga, draw upon Vedic wisdom, and ultimately, the purpose of these kinds of discussions is to have a deeper understanding of consciousness, perhaps. Dr. Frolley has cultivated an extensive catalogue of books and expertise on pranayama, mantra, meditation, Ayurveda, and much, much more. Vedic Astrology, Vedanta, just about everything that you name. We have some exposure to here by virtue of Dr. Frolley being present for us. So I don't think I can say much more than that.
You want me to add to it? I've
Please.
got a couple of things that I'd love to say. Thanks. Dr. David Frawley has a Doctor of Letters, the highest educational title possible in the field of yogic and Vedic sciences. And that is from the Swami Vivekananda Yoga Institute. He also has a second Doctor of Letters as well from the Ram Manohar Lohia you might have to say that for me, University. Dr.
Ayodhya, because it's located in Ayodhya.
Ayodhya in the temple.
Okay.
Nearby.
Nearby.
Yeah.
Mandir. Yeah.
But in the vicinity.
Okay.
Thank you. He has a National Eminence Award from the South Indian Education Society, affiliated with the Kanchi Shankaracharya Math, which has only been given about to 50 educators over many decades, including the most important gurus in India, with Vamadeva as the only Western-born teacher to receive this award. In India, Vamadeva's translation and interpretations of the ancient Vedic teachings originate from the original Sanskrit that have been acclaimed in both spiritual and scholarly circles. He has worked extensively, teaching, writing, lecturing, conducting research, and helping establish schools and associations in related Vedic fields worldwide over the last 4 decades. You can do any of his courses online through the American Institute of Vedic Studies. And he's been on Indian television. So often you can find him on, I think it's Indian BBC, is that correct? Or no, CBC?
They have a whole bunch of channels of their own. The closest one relative to the West is CNN 18.
Thank you. So we're very, very lucky to have him crossing both worlds. And I would say, just to be very respectful of how important you've been to me in my educational world, you have been my absolute Satguru in the field of Ayurveda. So I feel very lucky to have you, and also in yoga as well. So thank you, Vamadeva.
Adiom.
So I have a question to begin, and we have discussed these questions all week, so feel free to let the flow of conversation begin. I came across a teaching recently by Swami Jagadathamanda Saraswati, who said the aim of sadhana is to cross all dimensions and become dimensionless. The aim of sadhana is to cross all dimensions and become dimensionless. Can you elaborate a little bit on this statement and its relevance?
Yes, I don't want to, copy him, or I don't want to challenge him. I just want to discuss the topic. And of course, by dimensions, they usually mean the dimensions of space and time and all of that. And what I have done, I made some comments rather recently that the only dimension is the dimension of consciousness, because whether it's time or space or length or width or anything else, it's only through consciousness that it can function. So we all have an inner consciousness beyond all the dimensions. The mind then creates or uses the dimensions for external needs of event and place and other activities in the outer world. which we need to do, but we must remember that we are that dimensionless or consciousness beyond time, place, and number.
Okay, wonderful. We also discussed the nature of the mind. So in a previous discussion, you said to myself and students that the world is not an illusion. And we were just interested, I would love you to expand on this view, because we hear in many teachings that the world is illusory. So you would, please go ahead.
Well, first of all, you took it out of context. Basically, what we call the world is an illusion of the mind. Now, at another level, the world of nature is an appearance. The world we see is an appearance. Or as Vedas say, the world is an appearance of Brahman, like waves on the sea. We see the waves and we forget about the reality of the ocean. So in that regard, if we inquire into who am I am the self. But if we inquire as to what is the world, that is Brahman, cosmic reality, universal being. And that is why we have these Vedantic statements like Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. Everything, the entire universe is Brahman. At the same time, the mind is the matrix of ignorance, illusion, misperception, because it confuses its own perceptual judgment or needs with the reality. For example, size, measurement, how long something's last, whatever. These are coordinates of the mind. And of course, our social world is an illusion of society. Of course, it has various roots and so forth. So we need to go beyond the ego mind and the ego world to the reality of Brahman and the cosmic reality. And when we do that, we discover Brahman in everything, as most of the Advaitic teachers have said. And then we have this teaching in Vedanta of Satkaryavada, that the cause reflects, that the effect reflects the cause. Since Brahman is the cause, everything is Brahman. This teaching goes all the way back to the Brahma Sutras, and it is very commonly addressed in Vedantic text. The problem is we see the appearance and miss the reality behind it. We see the pot made of clay, we forget about the clay. We see the waves, we miss the ocean. We see the sparks and we miss the fire. So it's a little more complex than simply the world is an illusion. Actually, we are also illusions in our human identity, illusions, of course, that has a temporary reality in time, space, and action. And the mind is full of illusions. It likes to create illusions, imaginations, dreams, fantasies. We see it all around us. We see reality when the mind is silent. The inner seer is the silent consciousness, and that sees Brahman, that is Purusha, the Drashta, that sees the internal reality. That is the real seer and the real seeing, to see Satchidananda, being consciousness bliss, as the reality, and to forget about name, form, and number, which are the appearance. Hariom.
It's gorgeous. Can I say I just adore that summary of these concepts, the semantics around the word illusion and reality, and they're so troubling at times. Sometimes a reading of a Vedantic text could allow someone or invite someone to discard this as being not real, when there's a more nuanced view. There's whatever you're seeing, whenever you're not silent, whenever you're engaging in Maya, in measurement, you are simply seeing a partial view. You're seeing a mithya jnanam, not an unreal view, but a less real view, perhaps.
Yes, and they have two in Vedanta. There's two levels of reality. One is what is called vyavaharika, which is the practical outer reality of name, form, and number. We have to adapt to it. You drive a car, you take a plane, you use a computer, you have to deal with the practical factors. The other factor is paramartika, the supreme truth, the supreme self, which is everything is Brahman, everything is consciousness. So both dimensions are recognized, or both levels, but the Paramartika is the truth, the other is the outer activity of human life.
Perfect, thank you.
So our next question is based not only on the teachings of Ramana Maharshi, but others, but I'll directly reference him in this situation. We're looking at the illusory identification with the body. And he often taught that we do not move the body from place to place, but rather consciousness itself moves. Could you share your insights on this teaching, especially in relation to the practice of self-inquiry, Atma Vichara?
Well, actually, I think you might have it backwards. Consciousness never moves. Consciousness is immutable. The mind is moving, of course. The body also moves in the relative time, space, location, but you do not move. Your inner being is there. You are the same self even after a few steps, hopefully. Or even if you run around the block, you don't totally disappear. Nor does consciousness totally disappear unless you run so fast you fall on your face, but that's another matter. And of course, the outer world is always changing, but your inner being is the witness and the seer. That remains the same. And by cultivating the consciousness of the witness or the seer, then that consciousness remains unbroken. It remains continuous. That is yoga, continuous consciousness. But it does perceive, even the witness can see all the changes going on around the person. But at the same time, it's very important that we rest in that immutable core of our being as the seer and don't consider ourselves as something seen. Other people can see us. We can even see ourselves in the mirror, but actually our true self is not the seen. True self is the seer.
And so another teaching I found of his, which I feel might be very relevant and helpful to people, he speaks about pain from the Aham Spurana. The pain does not occur to you as the body. The pain occurs in you as the self. You are not the body or mind you imagine yourself to be. You are pure consciousness. So I would love your commentary on what he's saying about pain here and your experience, your direct experience, or
well, I don't quite understand it because the self is Ananda. So Ananda, the self is not dukkha or sorrow. In fact, one of the main reasons for seeking to know the self is to go beyond all sorrow and suffering. That is also the defined goal of yoga, to take us from any suffering or pain to pure Ananda. Of course, there is practical pain at a physical level, or whatever the body does where you're moving, and there's sometimes disturbances in the mind. These are witnessed, but that doesn't mean you have to become that, or you have to identify that pain as the reality. And that is why great yogis often are quite detached even from physical pain, much less psychological pain. So that is how I would look at that. And we can transcend pain through higher awareness. At the same time, we have to understand where the pain is coming from. And ultimately, the pain is coming from identification with the body and wrong ideas or perceptions or values in the mind.
Sure. So to even broaden the concept, Nisargadatta says that it's, we can take our consciousness beyond sickness, death, illness. And I suppose just this week, and I'm sure everybody in the room can attest to this, I had a client with a patient with multiple diseases, physical, mental, very, very complex. And to take him back to this teaching was sort of heart-stopping for him. As a reminder, you could see him remembering his own Satchitananda, bliss of being, or Ananda. Is there any commentary you could help us
Yes.
with?
When you observe something, you are not that. If you see a cup on a table, you are not the cup. If you observe your anger you see is not you, it goes away. So too, if we learn to observe pain, then pain will be diminished, although there are different physical levels of pain also. And even Ramana Maharshi, remember, he had cancer on his arm. In fact, he eventually passed away. He was telling the surgeons, how far to cut, and what he was feeling along. So there's a practical existence of pain we may have to acknowledge, but there is also the transcendent reality of our pure awareness. I'm not talking about, so see, consciousness is a term that's used on different levels.
Mm.
Somebody says they're aware of something, they've been conscious of something. That's not what we mean. Everything has consciousness, a rock, the river, all of that. But here we're talking about a higher self-awareness, or the consciousness of the self. That is something else. That is beyond the outer.
And again, to the semantic definitions, we in yoga we use the word consciousness to as an equivalent to Brahma and to these kinds of ideas as the immutable, eternal substrate of existence. But a materialist, practical society will often kind of refer to asmita or ahamkara as consciousness, that very specific physical mind.
Yes, in fact, you made a very important point. Yoga is chitta vritti nirodha, which is detaching from, disidentifying from, and moving beyond the activities of the mind, which is the outer mind, and going back to the Purusha or pure self or pure consciousness, which is beyond body and mind. So that yoga and Vedanta are very much on the same level on all these things.
So one more question. Is it possible to then live in this physical identity and existence, but also identify as something greater than it simultaneously at the same time? I think Sage Vasisht talks about this intermediate stage.
Certainly. In fact, even in our ordinary life, you can read a book and go back to another historical era and still be affected by it. We can go into science and consider multiple universes or black holes or quasars or anything. Mind has fairly broad perceptual capacities at that level, but it doesn't perceive the essence of reality. And for that, we have to let the mind go. And that is what yoga is for. I mean, Aurobindo always put it well that yoga is about the evolution of consciousness and humanity. I think Vivekananda had already said something like that. It's not just the mind is important. It's an outer factor. It measures, it judges, it's practical. But to know reality at a cosmic level, holistic level, we need to know the reality of consciousness, which witnesses the mind and essentially exists beyond the mind, because the mind is a referential entity. Your self is referential with the body, with what you own, with your job, your society, and external things we reference. But the inner being is the seer, which is beyond all reference.
Thank you, sir.
So I just wanted to touch upon a text that Ramana Maharshi used to recommend, Devika Lotara, and it's a scripture revealed by Lord Shiva to Devi Parvati and highly recommended by Ramana.
Yes.
In this scripture, he teaches, it is taught that chakras, prana, nadis, subtle bodies, and deities are not essential for direct self-realization. And so it would be lovely if you could explain this teaching and its relevance today for those of us who are involved in teaching this body to us.
Well, Devi Lokatara is about Devi. And Devi is the one who rules all the chakras. She has all the Shakti, the name and the forms. Tantra is full of that. And that's the first thing to recognize. Second thing to recognize is the greatest Advaitic teacher was Adi Shankara. The greatest teacher of Devi worship was Adi Shankara and his famous Saundarya Lahari. It explains all the chakras and nadis and more. It connects Devi then also with Atma, with Shiva. It teaches us how to transcend the chakras as well, because there is an inner movement. But all these teachings have been integrated in various ways. We have the whole Sri Vidya and Sri Chakra. The Sri Chakra is the entire universe, which is centered in Devi, which is in then turns centered in Para Brahman. And you have the Sri Chakra at all the Shankaracharya mutts, Kanchi, Sringeri, Dwaraka, etc. And you have Sri Chakra worship at the Ramanashram. You have the worship of Shiva at Ramanashram. You also have all these celebrations like Navaratri is coming up. And Ramana Maharshi got his realization when he was at the Meenakshi temple in Madurai. And of course, he was a great devotee of Shiva, particularly Dakshinamurti form of Shiva, Skanda form of Shiva's son, who he is identified with. Now, on the other side, we can get caught up in chakras and nadis and subtle realms, but we must remember the subtle realm is just a stage to move into the causal and beyond. Ramana also discusses that in his Upadeshasaram that I have looked into. So we must remember that these chakras are more like stepping stones than goals per se. And in the end, all the chakras are rooted in consciousness, which is in turn rooted in Atma, which is rooted in the Sahasrar, and also ultimately the Hridaya, or the spiritual heart. And we have all these funny things being discussed about chakras and nadis and putting a stone here and turning a certain direction there. I'm not saying they're necessarily wrong, but they give another view. And chakras are considered to be essences of cosmic reality, Muladhara connecting to the essence of the earth. And Sahasrar is the domain of Shiva, and it is also the domain of the Amrit or Ananda. So what happens is these teachings have a lot of complexity, and sometimes we misunderstand them or we kind of narrow them down. We developed a formula. This is something I did with Swami Veda Bharati, who I knew for many years. They talk about the chakras having so many, say, 4 petals. These are being located in a certain place. These are also coordinates of the mind. These petals relate to speed. Muladhara is actually slower moving 4, then faster moving 6, then as you go up. In the Tibetan Buddhism, they have 72 petals for the Manipura, or the navel chakra, but it's also the center of all the nadis and nerves at a physical level. Sometimes that is a question of the heart. You get to the Sahasrar and you have 1,000 petals, which means all the energies are there and are open, but it's not simply a numerical reality or a physical place. The Sahasrar then dwells in actually the Hridaya. In fact, even the Sushumna dwells there. And the Sushumna is a realm of space. It's not simply, there is a channel, you might say, where the energy moves. In fact, we also have in yoga all these serpents or nagas, which are sometimes looked at sensationally. But even in modern physics today, they talk about the universe being space full of wormholes. These wormholes are the serpents, and of course, the serpents are the forces that move through space. Kundalini Shakti is said to be a serpent, but that is a metaphorical force. She's a pranagni force that ultimately opens up to the Purusha. So a lot of these are also symbolism, but they're also connections to cosmic reality. The yogi can move, awaken the subtle body, and travel in it, move to other lokas, all of that. Deva lokas, dream worlds, time and space. So there are also other types of bodies, dimensions, minds, and realms that we can access through yoga. And of course, even the occult powers, the vibhutis, are connected to these subtle factors. And there's a lot of magic in the universe. They're still doing a lot of this archaeological study. And they're trying to figure out how did these primitive people move stones that modern equipment cannot move. And we have in Yoga Sutras, we have telepathy. We also have the ability to affect things at a distance. So there are also certain mind powers that way that we haven't discovered. So, but on the other hand, the chakra systems are also like the electrical system behind the physical body, like the different levels of coordination, switching energy, and of course, connections via waking, dream, deep sleep, and samadhi. But the self is beyond all the chakras, but the self, all the chakras are centered in the self through the Hridaya, as Ramana also said. Hariom.
I've heard Dr. Svoboda talk about if the Kundalini Shakti was truly awakened, we would not exist in this dimension any longer. I'm not sure if it's a direct quote as I'm saying that, it's a memory. So I don't want to say that they're his exact words, but would love your commentary on that. As the Kundalini Shakti awakens, if it was truly moving through all the chakra system, then we would no longer take form in this dimension.
Well, what happens is the Kundalini Shakti, of course, is the essential root energy in the Muladhara. It's also connected to Devis like Bhairavi. It's also connected to Ganesha, because it's a place of foundation and basis. And it awakens through higher devotion, higher focus. It is connected to samadhi and meditation. It can also be disturbed, or disrupted. It can be affected by drugs, medications, or excess activity. So we do have instances in which people who use too much power and have side effects from working with the chakras, or they try to use power of ego and power of mind rather than power of surrender and power of higher awareness. But of course, that Devi, that Shakti, that Agni is also honored and worshipped at various levels. And you must treat her as Devi. She is the mother of the universe. She's not some electrical force, just like you can get it from the utility store that you can plug into the wall and make it do things for you. You have to honor the cosmic power. And Shakti always arises from Shanti, which is peace, inner peace, which is also the space, the oneness, the focus, the concentration. Otherwise, we can do all kinds of things with the mind and bring about all kinds of even pranic movements. But we have to be careful because there's a whole science and foundation for working with these subtle forces. If you're working with electricity, you at least do put a glove on so you don't get electrocuted. And remember that these teachings are given to people at certain levels. In other words, once you have to develop certain power of awareness or a certain purity of lifestyle to deal with powerful energies, and that is always part of the sadhana in regard to the Shakti. And then we talk about the Atma Shakti, that is the power of self-awareness.
Thank you. This is also a statement from Ramana in part 8 of his book, Be As You Are, or David Godman wrote the book, of course, but these are his teachings. If a teacher offers activity or teachings to a student, they are not a master, but a killer. How should we as teachers interpret this statement today? And what does it reveal about the true nature of spiritual transmission or Shaktipat and the role of a genuine Satguru?
Well, let's look at all of Ramana's teaching. I have just done the Upadesha Saram again. What does the Upadesha Saram teach of Ramana's teaching? It starts off with the importance of karma yoga and right care of the body. It also then moves into mantra, meditation, pranayama, not as the goal of yoga, but as preparatory factors. Ramana also always taught that self-inquiry is not something any ordinary person can do just by wanting to or just by reading a book. He called it the Pakva Chitta, P-A-K-V-A Chitta. It means you have to have a ripe mind or a ripe awareness. In all of yoga and all of Vedanta, they always, when they discuss a topic or a practice, they first define what is called the adhikara. Adhikara means the readiness or what is required in order to do it. You can't run if you don't know how to walk. So in all these practices, they first give the adhikara. Now, this is very much defined in the Vedantic text, and it's very interesting to please read these key Vedantic texts of Adi Shankara, like Viveka, Chudamani, or Upadesha, Saram, or even almost any of them. You think you're going to find all this metaphysical going into outer space and infinite and eternal. And what does he end up talking about? Need, first of all, the need you must develop Viveka and Vairagya, discernment between real and unreal, Atma, Anatma, etc. And Vairagya, non-identification with body and mind. Viveka and Vairagya are also foundations of yoga and dominate the first 16 verses of the Yoga Sutras and are mentioned in many cases. So you have to prepare your sadhana, and they have what is called the sadhana chatushthya, or the 4 aspects of the sadhana. And Viveka and Vairagya are the foundation of that, and it tells you, have you developed your Viveka? Do you have detachment from all these outer things? Have you developed detachment, Vairagya? Are you immune to pain, to criticism, to people not liking you, to having difficulties and noise around you? And then it also, basically these sadhana factors, the same as yamas and niyamas of yoga. If you don't have those, you can't talk about samadhi. Now, there are many others. There's shama, control, power of mind. Dhamma, then control over the motor organs and the senses. Uparati, going beyond likes and dislikes. Titiksha, being able to tolerate, being not disturbed, being able to look beyond. Shraddha, deeper faith, and Atma. So all Titiksha, being able to handle difficulties in life. A yogi is not disturbed by flatter or criticism. So a lot of the Vedantic texts talk about that. Look at yourself. Do you have that? Mumukshatva. You have to make the pursuit of moksha your highest motivation, desire, and goal. It can't just be something you're interested in on one day or in the morning and not in the evening. So what is being recommended if the activities are of all these viveka, vairagya, etc., those are necessary, but these are also activities that reduce and ultimately remove negative activities and wrong perceptions. And one of the problems we have today, people aren't always taught that, and then they start reading a book on some transcendental dimension and forget the foundation. And in this context, I would like to go back to this idea of the Vedantic, the Advaitic tradition. You know, I've been connected to a number of them, Kanchi, Sringeri, Avdeshananda, Chinmaya Mission, Swami Dayananda, so forth. But they also teach these things. What is the adhikara of the student? And when they define, maybe you recommend the student to do mantras to focus the mind, or a ritual to calm their activity, or yoga, purification, fasting, need to purify the body, purify the prana, purify the mind, control the senses. So these factors come into play. If you don't do that, if you don't prepare yourself properly, telling a person to go to direct enlightenment is like telling a person to climb the highest mountain. And if you've never taught them how to walk, how to climb, and you're telling them don't take any equipment with you, they may not go so far. But at the same time, the important point of such statements is that people get often overly caught up in various activities, whether they're physical activities, social activities, outer activities of various sorts. And that must be reduced. There must be the turning within of the prana and also of the awareness over all. And that must be there. And if the teacher isn't teaching you to turn within, to develop calm, direct awareness, then of course we end up getting lost in all the Maya and all the changeability around us and within us. Hari-Om.
I have a question that we haven't discussed prior, and one of the Indian teachers on the internet, I was listening to him yesterday. He speaks about how to work with Kundalini Shakti, and he says there are 3 ways of awakening Kundalini Shakti. And I would love your opinion on it. I won't mention his name because I suspect your wisdom is going to supersede his. 1 is breath, 2 is mantra, 3 is mantra. Breath.
2 is mantra.
Breath. Mantra.
The 3rd. Okay.
Oshadi, so psychedelics. So
Oshadi is an herb. Yes.
Herb, yeah. But he's saying psychedelics. I'm using that term so I don't frighten him.
Yes.
But yeah. So, or soma, or whichever way you want to call it. He also then finally says, but bhakti yoga is the most direct path to self-realization. I'm not promoting psychedelics, but I would love, we've had a great discussion on this, and I would love you to educate all of us on this. Yeah, thank you.
The first thing you need to understand is there are many types of samadhi. I mean, many types, not only of samadhi, but also many types here of awakening Kundalini. In fact, what they say at the beginning of the Yoga Sutras is samadhis can be born of tamas, rajas, or sattva. For example, if you're all drugged out, that can be a tamasic samadhi. If you're caught up in some artistic inspiration or running, that get in the zone, that's more rajasic. And if you're into the yoga samadhi, that is in going beyond the mind. And they say it's the nature of the mind is to cultivate samadhi. The problem is we tend to cultivate more tamasic, rajasic samadhi. Even watching a movie is a kind of samadhi. You have a pratyahara, you have a dharana, you have a concentration, and all of that. So yes, and then the breath, yes, mind and prana always go together. In fact, to reach samadhi, you need not only the one-pointed mind, but you need a one-pointed or unitary prana. I discussed this once with some of Yogananda's monks in Ranchi when I happened to be doing a program there. But that is the fact. You must have unity of prana, unity of mind. So you also need to balance that's why we have the Nadi Shodhana and other types of breathing, balancing 5 pranas. I'm actually almost finished an entire book that's just on the subject of prana and vayu. But the point with that is, yes, pranayama is also an important aspect for leading to samadhi and for balancing the mind. Mantra is very commonly used for samadhi because the mind, when it becomes one-pointed in samadhi, enters into a more sattvic state. Both Ayurveda and yoga teaches that mantra is the way to make the mind sattvic and to also deal with all of our psychological problems, which are always born of rajas and tamas doshas at the level of the mind. So that being the case, mantra is often the easiest way to start. And mantra can be allied with pranayama to give more power to both. And mantra, of course, is often allied with bhakti. And here we have all kinds of tantric texts on Kundalini and Shakti. And that is basically what they introduce. And the Yoga Shakti, the Devis, you have, for example, Bhairavi in the Root Chakra or Tripura Sundari in the Sahasrara. There are various sadhanas that go along with these. And of course, the Shiva Shakti connection and the fact that the Atma transcends and yet is the place where all the Shakti gets reabsorbed. Now, Oshadi are the use of certain medications or plants. And the only thing I want to say here, first of all, in Vedas and in Ayurveda, you have certain healing herbs for the mind, and they can be called certain types of soma. You have 18 forms of soma mentioned by, I think it was Wagbat. In any case, Charak and Sushruta also mentioned these. But they're identified also with mantras. They're named after the meters of the language of Sanskrit and Vedas. And they're said to grow or bloom on the lotuses in the high mountains, which is also a metaphor for the mountain of consciousness. But there are certain high plants that work for calming the mind, for sedatives. This is the basis of a lot of even now what modern medicine is trying to do, change brain chemistry. And here again, you have to understand the nature and the origin and the usage. All over the world, you have a lot of native traditions. We have that in the United States where certain psilocybin, other things may be used. If they are used, they're used in a very sacred and specialized environment, and they're used under very specialized circumstances. So those things do exist and are used to some degree. Naga sadhus also can smoke cannabis. It helps them deal with the cold. It helps them deal with arthritis. I'm not saying that you need to take any of these things to reach samadhi. And also they have other effects on the mind that may be positive or negative. And Ayurveda uses them, and even take opium as the main pain reliever. On the other hand, modern medicine is just creating new opiates that are chemical in nature. I'm not trying to promote these things. I'm just saying they have certain effects. But the fact is you can also raise the Kundalini and all of that in a more sattvic way if with the right use of prana, mantras, and devotion. Now, devotion is one of the direct paths in the sense that Ramana identified surrender along with self-inquiry and often put them together. Aurobindo often emphasized the surrender, and Ramana also mentioned that Aurobindo had done that. And of course, bhakti is a kind of samadhi. And also, ultimately, bhakti then can lead you to, I am Shiva, see? So in a certain end, the bhakti can also lead to Atma. But we do have certain traditions that continue on with the bhakti in itself. You have the different traditions of Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta. Then you have the tradition of Visishta Advaita Vedanta. And this is the main tradition followed in a lot of the South India, particularly the worship of Vishnu as Narayana. And it's a kind of a bhakti Vedanta, as it were. According to Shaivism, it can also be that way. It can also bring in worship of Lakshmi. And this whole Shaivite, this tradition of Shaivism, and also particularly of Vaishnavism, where it's Vishishtadvaita or qualified. I know the head of it, his name is Chirajiva Swami. And I happened to meet him recently. We were both invited for the opening of the Swaminarayan temple in Abu Dhabi. And we were going up the temple and happened to come in contact. I hadn't seen him in a long time. And this Sri Vaishnava tradition is the tradition that is the basis of what Krishnamacharya did. He followed that particular tradition. He actually didn't follow Advaita specifically, although these traditions are not very far apart, and they do they do a lot of Murti Puja. That is the basis. They usually have a small Murti of of Vishnu that they do their puja to 3 or 4 times a day. And they have that famous place of Tirupati. It's called Tirumala Tirupati. That is the main center of this Vasishtadvaita tradition. And it is one of the great pilgrimage centers in India overall. And I want to say a little bit more about bhakti in the sense that even in Jnana Yoga, bhakti is very important. Now, We all know, or at least most of us who've studied, that the main guru teacher of Advaita Vedanta is Adi Shankara, right? And he has so many texts, commentaries on Brahma Sutras and Upanishads and all these different things and all these different texts on Vedanta. But what people don't realize is the greatest number of devotional stotras and songs chanted in India, particularly in temples, were composed by Adi Shankara. The great Saundarya Lahari, the most important text on Tantra, and its related Ananda Lahari to Devi Tripura Sundari. We just had the worship of Ganesha and the main chant to Ganesha, Mudakara Tamodakam, is Adi Shankara again. And Vishnu, there's Krishna, Achyutam Keshavam Rama Narayanam, one of the most popular ones. It's Adi Shankara again, to Rama, to every deity, to Vishnu. So there was never this separation, or in the sense of bhakti being against jnana. But of course, bhakti can have a certain focus, jnana can have a certain focus. And here, I have a certain metaphor I like to emphasize, and it's very simple. The mind is like a wick, where like a wick of a ghee lamp or a candle. Knowledge is the flame, but devotion is the oil. Without the bhakti, the mind burns itself up. Now, of course, I'm focusing this basically at intellectuals, and particularly the intellectuals who are more in the outer world than the inner world. And even Advaita said you must have that devotion to Ishvara, devotion to the Guru, devotion to Brahman, devotion to Atma. It is, and then of course we have the issue of what they called idol worship. And our place here has all kinds of extraordinary murtis, from very large, almost 1-ton Shivalinga to more poor Devis and bronzes and other things. And so it's very important, the uses of form for dharana, for concentration, and the use of temples. It creates a sacred space. And in all the devotional traditions, they do the prana pratishta of the murti, or the form, by chants, by certain abhisheks, by offering flowers, by vastu position. They bring the devata into the murti for the worship and for the arati, but then they let it go back. It is a way of going into the cosmic and transcendent. So I like to tell people everybody practices idol worship. In fact, idol worship is dominating our word today. But the dominant form of idol worship is IDLE worship. We are idly doing all kinds of things. And if we do them with focus, then we're doing true idol worship, and everything becomes ideal, IDEAL. So devotion has its place, but it should not be. The Gita says this: bhakti or shraddha, faith or devotion, can be tamasic, rajasic, or sattvic. So you need a sattvic devotion. When you're fighting, when you're struggling and all these things, there's a lot of tamasic and rajasic energy going on as well, in various types of devotion or surrender or follow the leader. You follow the leader, but if it's a tamasic or rajasic leader, you can be out there for the country, out there for the leader of the country, but they may take you somewhere where we don't need to go. So we always respect, and if you go back to the Vedas, the main teaching is devotion, in the sense that is, in Sanskrit, there's the word thou, TVAM. What Twam Bhava is most common, and Aham Bhava is there, but it's not as common. But what is Tat Twamasi? It implies the thou, not just simply the I. And the aham is also Brahman, aham Brahman. It is not the aham being ahankara. Hari Om.
Thank you. So I'd love to bring us on to Soma Rasyana for the mind and any herbs that we might take. And we've discussed before that Soma, in the broader context, its connection with Amrit and Sahasrara chakra. But yes, if we could focus on the inner Soma of the yogic tradition with references to the botanicals, the Rasyana botanicals, especially the ones for mind, Medha Rasyanas, the agents for mental clarity.
Yes.
And
Well, yes. Ayurveda includes psychology. It also includes yoga. It also includes the effect of herbs upon the mind and the nervous system. And we want to stay at a very simple level. First of all, with Brahmi and its related Manduka Parni, because, you know, we're living in this, like even with the screen now, we're working and living in this electrical age and electrical energies, which can compromise and disturb our prana and also our minds. So Brahmi is a very key herb for calming the mind, for expanding awareness, and for purifying the blood, the nervous system, the liver, and increasing that sense of calm. Manduka Parni, these are relative botanical similarities. So we recommend more Brahmi tea, and even they say for mantra meditation, they've often have a long history of taking a tea that's 3/4 Brahmi and 1/4 Akama of the Vacha herb. So the use of them that way, I wouldn't say that's necessarily a psychedelic. It's more of a nervine usage of the herbs.
Dr. Frawley, sorry, I missed that. Agama, the second herb, Brahmi, and
Akoma, which is also Vacha, Acaris calamus, but also called calamus.
Calamus.
And it's one that sometimes they say is toxic, but it's not a kind of a misperception of that, but is used along with Brahmi. It's also good for the nasya and the nervous system, simple things like tulsi that are clearing off the sinuses, that also has the effect upon, because when you take in the prana, if your nostrils are blocked, then it's not going to the brain and all of that. Opium is, of course, a pain relieving item. And it was used traditionally as a pain relieving item per se. And there are also many other special herbs. And then, of course, we have something like ashwagandha, which gives strength to the nervous system, the mind, the deeper tissues. And that's widely used also. And it's used with other strengthening herbs like bala or shatavari, that's more affecting the emotional nature. That's also used more by women. And shilajit, these special mineral essences coming from the Himalayas and other high mountains. And so there is this rasayana chikitsa, but it also involves like putting Brahmi oil on the head, or calamus, or sandalwood oil in a sesame base, and using that, because that also has a way of calming and also balancing us out. That being said, of course, psychedelics and things can be overused or misused, and they need more exploration. They do have pain relieving qualities, nervine qualities that are getting some degree of examination. But at the same time, they should be combined with sattvic living, a proper preparation. And there's something that is also more introductory, as it were. In fact, that's something we learned way back in the 60s. I won't tell you all about that, but that some of these things can introduce you to something, but they can't create the situation where you can simply abide in that. One of my friends who I work with on ancient history, Graham Hancock, who I'm in contact with commonly, he's studied those things quite a bit and has a few books on that. I haven't done so much work with that, because we can create the inner soma through pranayama, mantra, meditation, and certain sattvic herbs, and even certain fruit and certain of these Brahmi type herbs. You can change your brain chemistry through changing your perceptions, like color therapy. You can do it through yantras and the geometrically focusing of the mind, certain liquids, certain pilgrimages, and even certain devotional forms, Chavanprash or Ashwanis, the Ashwani Kumars or the Ashwani Rishis. That's a very interesting story. I'll tell it to you rather briefly. There was a famous rishi named Dadyak who had the secret of immortality, or the soma vidya. And the Ashwanis had all the other vidyas and miraculous powers, but they hadn't got that one. So they came to see Dadyak and said, please teach us this soma vidya so we can be immortal forever. And Dadyak said, I'm sorry, I can't do that, because the god Indra, the Devata Indra, who is the king of all the gods, said that if you teach this to anyone, I will have to cut your head off. And the Ashwani said, oh, no problem. We have all the other problems. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to cut off your head and give you the head of a horse, because we're the horsemen after all. Then you teach us the soma vidya through the mouth of the horse. Then when Indra comes in and cuts your head off, we'll give you back your original head. So that is how they were able to gain the highest knowledge. And Ashwini is the first of the nakshatras. It has lots of powers, lots of healing type powers. It also teaches us this lesson that to go beyond, you have to lose your head. That's why poor Ganesha loses his head, Hayagriva, forms of Shiva, because you have to go beyond the mind, and you have to learn by paradox and symbol, not just by somebody giving you a literal and fixed statements. And soma is in many things. You see, soma, in that sense, art is a type of soma. Soma is the rasa of ananda. And to reach that, you have to have a deeper perception. The artist sees the ananda in things. And so the soma has many forms, and bhakti is also another form of soma, jnana. Samadhi is the state of soma. The flow of soma in the mind is the flow of samadhi. And certain plants can help because the plant kingdom is also from soma or the moon. In fact, the hymns for healing plants are always to soma and the moon and so forth. So we have to take a rather wide and deeper view, and we'll discover there are lots of secrets, even sensory perception. Watch the moon rise, you'll get a touch of soma, and other aspects in nature of the flowers. Fragrances also are kinds of somas, because soma always connects to the tanmatras, the sensory essences, fragrance, taste, touch, music, and sight, all of that. Those also then move you into the subtle or the astral realm. And then you move beyond see, what are we doing when we're seeking pleasure? It's through the senses, but we're getting it indirectly through a sensory activity, not directly like through an artistic inspiration or through a power of devotion. So these are all factors of that. And the biggest drug we get addicted to is our own mind. And our mind has all of its own mantras, maybe woe is me or I want that. It also has its energies it has to run after, and its strong sensations. It gets addicted to bright lights or noise or whatever. Shiva drums, that helps them. So I would say look at it that way, but always be careful. And we have these herbs and drugs can also be explored properly. But one thing we have to remember that most the pharmaceutical medicine we have is mainly devoid of prana because it is chemical. how can something without prana really heal us in the long run? That's why pranayama also has its soma type effect. So we have to be careful in this pharmaceutical era. And again, whatever we take, we have to get into the sacred side of it. And there are also certain ways of preparing and holding the nervous system. Ghee is also very good for the nervous system and lubricating it and cooling it properly. Hariom.
Just on a practical level, before we move on to yantras, a couple of my friends actually have had very great difficulty in sleeping at the moment, and I'm sure I'm speaking for a few people who might experience same. And they are going to the chemist and picking up ashwagandha. What are your thoughts? You've already commented just a little bit, but and then they asked me, should I be taking this? So, oh yes, okay, but there are so many factors, aren't there, in sleep?
Well, yes, but ashwagandha is not specifically, it helps with calm the vata dosha. There are many things that can help you with deep sleep, even simple fragrances like sandalwood, even deepening and calming and silencing the breath. I also tell people, shut everything off, shut the world off at least an hour or two before you go to sleep. Don't worry, the world will still be there when you get up in the morning. You don't need to take it to sleep with you. It's rather heavy to carry, and it has usually a lot of strange things going on. And other oil massage to the head, of course, then you have even the Shirodhara and other things, and oil massage in general are very helpful. There's also, Brahmi is often used in certain oil, and also ashwagandha is used, bal ashwagandha, and many other types are important that way, chandanadi and all of that. And of course, reduce the activity. You go into the calming or centering asana as well as calming the breath. You also need to silence the mind, silence the sound, and even focusing the eyes on a ghee lamp or on a deity form, bring it into a place of stillness and change your routine. Another thing you can do, which is very helpful, which I tell people we really need today, is before you go to sleep at night, if at all possible, go outside and look at this dark sky and meditate on the dark sky, at least for 15 minutes, 30 minutes, because you reclaim your depth perception. Your mind moves into space. You need space in your mind to go into deep sleep. And that is a simple way to do that. Otherwise, we're looking at little boxes and little screens. Your mind becomes a little box and a little screen. And you can turn it off, but it tends to get caught in that kind of superficial movement. Remember to bring the wideness and the space, so you can just meditate on bringing space into the mind, or on Shiva or someone like Hanuman, who is the master of all the Vayus.
That's great. So moving on to the therapeutic use of yantras, where I'm interested in how practitioners could work with the Sri Yantra, and I'll put it on the screen in a moment,
Okay.
and other yantras for spiritual transformation, healing, and meditation practice. And I'll just preface it for anyone who has never heard of a yantra before. It's a geometric representation of the cosmic forces and divine energies, reflecting the microcosm of the macrocosm, and by extension, the human body as a microcosmic replica of the universe. So my understanding is that you can start to learn the yantra, visualize it, and then start to draw it in your mind and then dissolve it. So I'll get you to comment on that. But I have a few more things that I would like you to address, and just how do we use it in daily meditation? How do we have it in the home as a sacred object? And then maybe just discussing personal yantras as therapeutic amulets for healing and illness prevention, because I know there are a few medicos in the group who would like to know about this. And then how that yantra might take us on to advanced practice. Now, I might just pause and just show the yantra before I begin. Is that okay with you if I just share the screen?
Certainly. Mm-hmm.
If it's going to be here. No, it's gone away. So I will try one last time, and then if it's not there, I'll find it in a bit in a moment. No, it just disappeared. It will come in a moment. I'll find it.
Okay. Here we have to understand Tantra overall and the related factors. And in this approach, you start out again with the form of the deity, whether it is a statue or whether it is just something visualized in the mind. You start out with what is the body of the devata. Then the yantra is said to be the subtle body of the devata, the energy field that it is involved with it. Then you have the threefold yantra, mantra, tantra. And yantra, actually a yantra typically means a machine. In fact, it means a machine, or it's even an electrical force. And ya also has that directive energy, a yam being the bija mantra also for vayu. And then when we move on to the mantra then is not only the name of the deity, it's all the forms of the mental forms, knowledge aspects of the deity. And finally, Tantra is the whole science and philosophy of all these, the deity form, yantra, mantra, and even also the nadis, the chakras, all of that. In fact, the chakras are also yantras of a certain type, and the nadis are also connected to the flow of the energy. And so these teachings have come out in the very extensive form of the Shri Yantra or the Shri Chakra, which you have put up there. And generally speaking, it's put so that there are 5 downward facing triangles and 4 upward facing triangles as Shiva Shakti, and 43 points altogether. It has a huge type of mathematics behind it. On one level, it represents Meru or Kailas as the cosmic mountain. In fact, it's even said by the Ramanashram that the Arunachala peak is a Sri Yantra, and inside the devatas dwell and have their form. So there's a whole science of practice from the outer to the inner, to the different levels and lokas, to the different mantras and deities. And essentially you have 2 main traditions in South India. One is when the central deity is, as Adi Shakti is Tripura Sundari, and her deity, or I should say her mantra, as Hrim. All these other petals have different bija mantras that go with them. And then there is also then the second tradition, which is more the Lakshmi tradition, which uses the mantra Shrim, and also this Vaishnava tradition we talked about. The Sri Vaishnava also uses the Sri Chakra and also has Lakshmi as the central deity. And there are a whole set of practices and connections even between the yantras and the subtle body. In fact, it's said that your subtle body, starting with the base of the spine to the top of the head, also forms the Sri Yantra. So you are also developing that. There are different levels of the yantra, different forms of the devatas, and this is specifically more relative to the Shri Yantra. There are yantras to all the devatas, even astrological yantras that are more numerical, in which the form of the deity is generally shown. Sometimes the triangles and other outer forms are also used, sometimes certain numerical forms. And then the yantra has to be energized with a set of mantras. And then also certain oils, fragrances, etc., other deity forms are used. And usually we put certain yantras in different places beneath the murtis, or you'll have yantras for protection of the vastu of the house. You'll have yantras in temples beneath the deity. In fact, the temple itself is a three-dimensional yantra, and mantras and yantras working together. And then, of course, the deity with its form, and then also with its mantra, and also with its a yantra. And think of it this way. When you focus on something like a geometrical form, you are restructuring your mind. So you're restructuring the mind and the awareness, and even add a deeper level of buddhi and so forth. So when you practice all the mantras, yantras, pranayamas, rituals, etc., that go along with the yantra, then you're restructuring the brain and also the nervous system and the subtle body as well. And you'll also see that Sri Yantra is the cosmic mountain, is also expansion of Om. And you can also see that this threefold laws occur at different levels of the universe. And there's a lot of secrets hidden in numerology, and as well as the geometrical structure. For example, the number 43 is very important. Because it's 16 and 27, which are the numbers of 3, the numbers of 2, numbers of 4. So there's a lot of numerical things there. And then it's used as part of the sadhana. Sometimes it's used just in a more symbolic way, like the picture of the devata or the guru. The actual worship of the Sri Yantra takes a long time. And it's connected to other vidyas like Dasha Mahavidya. And it's also, there are different modifications of it relative to certain energies and devatas. And then there is the whole use of the yantras for the planets, for for dealing with the astrological afflictions. And of course, even in Ayurveda via the nervous system. And this Sri Yantra kind of brings out all the cosmic energies and is basically a replica of the cosmos overall, but is a very complex and in-depth study. It's followed a little more in the south of India. And again, it's used in all and each of these Shankaracharya ashrams not only they have their form of the Sri Chakra, they also have a special Devi that goes along with it, like Kanchi Kamakshi in Kanchipuram or Sharadama in Sringeri. So they have the Devata there, and they do regular worship to the Devata, relative also including the chakra and the yantra and the mantras. And even these tantric texts are usually rooted in the Sri Yantra approach, but also we go back to this whole science of what is called nada and bindu. Bindu is the point, and nada is the vibration. Science teaches that the universe consists of waves and particles. That's another way of looking at nada bindu. Shiva is more the bindu, which is also can be the dropping of soma. Shakti is more the nada or the wave or the mantra. So these awakenings, these forces, and then also restructuring the mind, because whatever you give your power of attention to the most structures your brain and nervous system. So it's better that we have our minds restructured according to the Sri Chakra rather than a football game or something else, a movie. So whatever we give our focus to. Explaining Sri Yantra is a long process, and it's a long practice. And there are a number of texts, and connecting there, we have one we use called the Yogini Hridaya Tantra. There's also pujas of the Sri Yantra, teaching it like the Devata and also bringing the Devata in. And here I have to mention, besides Ramana, another name, which is Kavyakanta Ganapati Muni. It was always said that Ramana is Ganapati, Ramana is Skanda, the fire son of Shiva, and Ganapati is Ganesha, the other son of Shiva. And Ganapati actually found Ramana when he was quite young. When Ramana went, eventually after his wandering, he entered into the Arunachaleshwara temple, and they had something called the Patala Linga, which is a down, lower kind of base room. And he just sat there in samadhi, but his ants were all over his body. He wasn't eating properly. So Ganapati was able to convince him to come out and take his role as a guru. And he also gave him the name Ramana. Now, in that context, Ganapati had his own knowledge, and he was the greatest mantra teacher of modern India. He wrote the great Uma Sahasram, 1,000 verses in praise of Goddess Uma in every possible meter, unfolding all the secrets of bhakti, jnana, Sri Chakra, Dashama Vidya, and so forth. And the Sanskrit of most of Ramana's works were helped put together by Ganapati, whereas Ganapati had a little interesting story. When Ganapati was finishing off, he took a vow to finish off his 1,000 verses to Uma, to Devi, at a certain period. He came to the last month and he was still 300 verses short. And so he went to Ramana to get his blessing, and he got that. And he came back after a month and says, I'm now presenting you the whole work. And Ramana said to him, did you transcribe everything that I told you, that I said to you? So he also took part in that. So those teaching he covers quite a bit, and the Ganapati does, and that whole mantra, tantra, yantra. And he also talks about all the meaning of chakras, Devi and devatas and all of that. And we have to remember that the devata is not what we call a god or a goddess in the kind of psychological, Freudian, or imaginary sense. The devatas are cosmic powers. So they're working, for example, Hanuman is the son of Vayu. So he represents the Kriya Shakti, the Vayu Shakti in the universe, and rules over that. So it's important to understand that, and then the power, the force of the Devata can come in. And of course, I mentioned that they regarded Arunachala as a kind of Sri Yantra. And of course, Kanchipuram. One interesting thing that I was very honored to have happened is one of my long-term friends and associates at the Ramanashram is Ram Mohan. And he's also run the mountain path for a long time. He represents them in various countries and various events, but he became a good friend of mine more than 30 years ago. And he took me to see the Paramacharya of Kanchipuram 3 times. He was the most highly regarded of all the Shankaracharyas. He passed away at the age of 102, some years after that. But he was carrying on all these teachings and traditions. So there's a whole study of the Sri Chakra that's done by the Kanchi Ashram. And they also have a whole text of Saundarya Lahari of Adi Shankara with the commentaries from their side. So a lot of these groups have also preserved these teachings as well. But to do the full Sri Chakra work would certainly take time and the right adhikara. And the use of yantra, though, is very simple, from the triangle to the 6-pointed star to the special ones for the different devatas, particularly Ganesha. Ganesha rules all aspects of science, mathematics, geometry, form, structure. He's the manifest form of Shiva or Om, and whereas Shiva Pashupati is the transcendent form of all of that. And getting to know devatas is also an important part of the teaching and tradition, which is not worshiping some particular form, but understanding the cosmic powers. And they have their days like Ganesh Chaturthi and Ganesha and Navaratri for Devi and 9 forms. And they're connected with many aspects of symbolism, including whether it's mantra, yantra, tantra, flowers, pujas, rituals, and all of that. Hariom.
So we have a little bit of time left, and I was just wondering if there's anyone in the group who might like to ask a question of Dr. Frawley. Please feel free to go ahead. If there's no questions, I'll just ask you to make one more comment. I believe your teaching is each asana is a Vedic meditation in itself.
Well, asana, you see, yoga is always defined as nirodha, right? But what does nirodha mean? Nirodha also means calming, detaching, stabilizing, and creating shanti. So actually in traditional text, pranayama is called prana nirodha. Asana is called asana nirodha or nirodha of the body. You put the body in a state in which the prana can move, in which stillness and peace can come in which the nadis can open and flow, and in which you can let go of the disturbances of the mind, because the disturbances of the mind come in through the senses, they get lodged in the nervous system, they get caught in the points of vata dosha, like the joints, the open spaces, the nervous system, the all this digestive system, and so forth. And also, asana should be, I hate to say it, but in a way it's good, asana should be a form of bhakti or worship. In other words, when you're doing the asana, it should be like a ritual, not just simply an exercise. Even pranayama, you're offering the prana, you're offering inhalation to exhalation. The prana devata, all devatas are connected to prana and all the related things. So yes, that should also be there, because yoga is a form then of honoring all these cosmic forces, not in the sense of blind belief, but in the sense of recognizing the subtle energies, the ananda, the consciousness that is there in nature. Every flower is a yantra. And you'll notice nature is full of all of its variations. You'll never find 2 trees that are exactly alike, or 2 leaves. Adi Shankara, as Dakshinamurti, teaches beneath the banyan tree. So remember that as well. So we are also integrating ourselves into nature's intelligence. Body is also your sacred earth. So treat it with the same care that you would the sacred earth. We use it more as a vehicle of enjoyment, but we can also use it as a vehicle of ananda in a higher sense, but that requires the calmness, the stillness, and of course, the nirodha of the asana. Hariom.
Hariom. Any final questions? Oh yes, Jocelyn, please.
I've recently remembered Vajrayana, the branch of Buddhism, and coming back to it, realized that it has very strong tantric roots. Is there still a strong relationship between Vajrayana and Hindu practices?
Yes, it's a very good you've asked me this question. First of all, I've been involved with a group called the India Foundation, which is involved with all kinds of activities and gatherings. And one we've done for since 2012 is what we call the Dharma Conference. And we bring together the main Hindu and Buddhist leaders. For example, we have Swami Avdeshananda, or we used to have Swami Dayananda when he was alive, and we usually get Lama Semten of the Sarnath school, who is the main teacher there, along with the Dalai Lama and translator for him. I've also someone with Sanskrit. I picked up some of the text. In fact, it's very strange. One of my publishers in India has lots of Sanskrit books. Oh, we have a bunch of Tibetan books. So he gave them to me, and I didn't realize he ends up giving me the main tantric text that the Tibetans use. And basically, Tibetan Buddhism is also rooted, the Vajrayana was rooted, came out of Andhra Pradesh, Nagarjuna, and that tradition was also very popular in Indonesia and other places. So I picked up this text the other day and opened it by chance, and it was a Lord Buddha bowing down before Saraswati, and he was asking her, he says, look, I have to speak before all these people. I really need to be a good orator to do so. So I need your grace. And she said, of course, certainly you need that. And I will be with you all the time. In the Tibetan Tantra, you also have Shiva. You also have, of course, the sun. You also have mantras. In fact, they use the purely Sanskrit mantras, starting with Om, Hum. But they also have names of different deities. They have the chakras, nadis. They usually only have 5 chakras. They combine the 2 lower ones and the 2 upper ones. And the bodhicitta is the consciousness in the hridaya, or the heart, Om Mani Padme Hum. And they're using a lot of the same bija mantras overall. And Om is a mantra that they also commonly used. They have abhishekas, and they have what is called deity worship, or deva puja. They have different forms of the bodhisattvas. They have different forms of Buddha. Tara, of course, has innumerable forms. And it's curious that the Buddha, before 5,000 years before Shakyamuni, who was a king of the solar dynasty, was called Kashyapa Buddha. And yet Kashyapa is one of the 7 Vedic rishis. So basically connected to Kashmir, and they're all both connected. The Buddhist Hindus, speaking Tibet, were connected to Mount Kailas, which we visited, I think, in 2007. And the Mahayana tradition, which you find throughout most of the Buddhist, a lot of the Eastern Buddhist traditions, Japan, China, also use the deities. I mean, basically they worship the same, the bodhisattvas. They have a bodhisattva for the sun, all these things, or the sun Buddha. They do the worship of that. And the curious things is Japan. Japan has preserved many old Hindu deities and temples. You have temples to Saraswati, to Brahma, to all the main Vedic deities. And then when I was having a discussion with Lama Semten about the Hindu and Buddhist traditions and their similarities and differences. And he says, all these traditions coming out of India are well known to be great debaters. Great debaters, great philosophers. In fact, debate is part of what every monk and every sadhu is supposed to learn. And that requires that you know what your opponent is going to say and can refute everything that they say. And he says, then we all have so many philosophies. We have the different Mahayana, Theravada traditions. You have all these systems of Vedanta, Shaivism, Vaishnavism. But we all share the same values. There's all these dharmic values. There's always the honoring of the guru, the ahimsa. All the monastic vows are pretty much the same. We have similar yoga practices and forms of meditation. And even Lord Buddha, one of his last sutras, he says, I am the entire universe dwells within me. So there's a lot of similarities there. In fact, Dalai Lama says that Hindus and Buddhists are like twin brothers. And he says that his citizenship is from India, of course, because he was taken away in that regard. And he's even now the Chinese want to determine who the next Dalai Lama is going to be. And Dalai Lama says, well, that's very nice of you, but you don't really have the characteristics and the knowledge to be able to do that. He would say the next Dalai Lama should be born on the India side. And we've also been in touch with a lot of the Theravadins in South India and of course Thailand and those groups. And the sad thing is the Buddhists are being heavily targeted for conversion in the countries in which they live. And they're small countries like Thailand and Sri Lanka, whereas India is a bigger country. So they like to be united with the Hindus and India to help protect their own native traditions. They have all trades and similar temples and all those things going on. And for example, the king of Thailand is called Ram, and Ayutthaya is their capital city, which is, of course, Ayodhya. So a lot of crossover is there. But we do hope these traditions are preserved. I remember visiting Dharamsala, and the Tibetans showed us their library. They have thousands of Sanskrit works, but they don't have many people to translate them. And so there more work on that side needs to be done. But there are many Buddhist sutras and many similar ideas about meditation and consciousness. Hariom.
Hariom. Thank you, Dr. Frawley. The time with you has been amazing, and it's an incredible mind that you have. I think if all of us watched this 3 times over, we'd just be touching the surface of some of the teachings that you've offered us today. So yes, thank you. Incredible. Your life is incredible. Your work is incredible.
Well, thank you, but whatever I've taken has come from the traditions and the gurus and the teachings, so I don't take any personal credit for anything. But what I do say is that most of the academics, particularly starting in the British colonial era, just where their goal was to destroy these traditions, not to preserve them. So I'm glad that some of us in the West are now taking some alternative to that and making it so these teachings are accessible, because there are huge traditions there and they are relevant. Sanskrit is also a very understandable language, but it also needs to be studied properly. And I'm glad you're taking up your work in Australia, and I'm glad to see these wonderful yoga teachers in Australia. And we are connected. They will be doing another program in Orissa next January, but we also do go to other countries and other places. We have been at times in touch with the Chinese and the Japanese, and I'm happy to say quite a number of my books have gone into Korean. Not that it's a language that so many people understand, but it's very important to recognize the value of the tradition, but also our need to adapt it to our world today. And we do see a lot of that going on. Another organization we're connected to strongly is Swaminarayan. We've been involved with a number of their temples, and I believe they have some in Australia. They just completed the largest temple in North America, the largest religious building in North America, over 200 feet high in Newark, New Jersey, so the people in New York and Philadelphia could see it. And I was happy to be honored by going for the opening of that about a year plus ago. So we are all still a common family, common beings, and yoga and all these teachings unite us, but they also make us hopefully more discerning and more detached in what we do. BIYOME.
Thank you. Well, you can stay in touch with Dr. Frawley via his many books, over 50. I think it'd be up to 52 or 53 by now, if I'm correct. And also his website. He's got fabulous online courses that you can stay in touch with his teachings. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your questions. They're very good.
That's great. Bye-bye. Take care. Thanks.
Good. Yeah.
Adios.